I'm starting with today's lesson, and of course, this is grade 11 maths, and of course, we are continuing with finance. Let me just indicate that this is our finance, and of course, sorry about the delay. I hope that everyone can hear me now before we can start. And of course, what is important as well is that at the end of the lesson, please feel free to contact me at any time. This is finance once again, and we're going to look at the running costs, of a vehicle. Now, if you look at the running cost of a vehicle, you will realize that the costs will include fuel, amongst others, and of course, it will also include maintenance. It will include quite a lot of, other things, such as the cost of replacing the tires, and so on and so forth. So today, I want us to really look at this particular costs, and I hope that they will be able to help us to make informed decisions. When we make a decision to either hire a car or to use our own car. So the following table consists of the AA, schedule for vehicles, in as far as the costs are concerned. Now let's study this table and look at the engine capacity. The engine capacity of a car is given in the left, and then you can see that, in this engine capacity there, we have got 1,300. That is our capacity, or engine capacity. And of course, we also have the petrol factor, which I'm going to talk about a lot today. And we also have quite a number of other factors, such as the repairs, as well as the tire costs. And we will look at the calculations. How do we calculate these costs per hour? So there will be a formula that we will look at in as far as these calculations are concerned. Right, I have already indicated to you that we have the engine capacity. So it ranges from, as you can see this table here, 1.3. They sometimes call it 1.3, which is 1,300. That is the capacity of the engine. In brackets CC there, you also have the ones that are between 1,301 as well as 1,500. And of course, you also have others. So these are engine capacities. And of course, this is not the price of petrol. This is what we know is known as the petrol factor. And we are going to use this petrol factor when we do our calculations, and you will see how it fits into the equation when we need to know the costs or the running costs of vehicles per kilometer. Meaning that, when you have a vehicle, when you buy a vehicle, you don't just pay the amount as well as the insurance amounts and so on, but there are daily costs, that are involved when you travel with your vehicle. That is why if a car has traveled many kilometers, it is likely not to be in a good condition than a car which has traveled less kilometers. So for instance, let's say a car has traveled, you buy a second-hand car which has traveled about 30,000 kilometers, and there's another one which has traveled 300,000 kilometers. So those two cars are different. You know, the lesser the kilometers on a vehicle, then the more the value. And we will show you how it is calculated today. Right. Without any waste of time, I just want to show you the formula to calculate the running costs of a car per kilometer. We also call it the cost per kilometer. So you can see the C there stands for cost, and then the dash there per kilometer there, cost per kilometer. So we'll know now how much does the car cost per kilometer. So what we do is that we take that column in A, there's a column there. In A, we take that column and then we multiply it by the petrol price per liter. And remember that column that I'm talking about, A, that is the petrol factor. So we take the factor. Say your vehicle was falling between, or maybe it's a 1.3, 1,300 engine capacity. We take this factor, which is 6.62. We multiply that by the cost of petrol per liter. Now, that is the point in A, that is the factor or the fuel factor. We multiply the fuel factor by the petrol price, which is in rands per liter. And then we add B. And what is B? B is the service and repair costs, and which is made in cents. And that is part of the maintenance. We say that this is the service and repair costs, which is calculated in cents. So this 17,18, that is cents, 17 cents. It means it's 17 cents. You know, we add the 17 cents there if it is the engine with a capacity of 1,300. And then the last one, of course, we add C. And what is C? C is the cost per, the cost of the tire in cents as well. So this will be the tire costs, and which is in cents. And remember that we do everything here based on the petrol factor, which is informed by the capacity of the engine. So this whole table, everything that is here is very important. The engine capacity, the petrol factor, the service and repair costs, and the tire costs. So these things are very, very important when we look at the cost of the running costs of a vehicle per kilometer. So we say that this is the average running cost, which is cost per kilometer. Remember, these costs include the VAT. So we say that all costs are inclusive of VAT. So remember the VAT, which is calculated at 15%, must be paid. So you know that tax has to be paid throughout, and in this case, VAT is the relevant tax that is going to be charged. So VAT has already been included in all of these service and repair costs. So I'm just showing you now that this is the formula that we use. And I hope that you have a pen and a paper with you, and you can be able to jot down this formula, because we are going to need it when we do the calculations at a later stage. Please note that the values in the service and repair costs and the tire costs column represent cost values in units of cents per kilometer. So as I've said already, those values are in cents. In other words, this 8.98, that is 8 cents, not 8 rands. So they are in cents, as you can see, even in the column there. So they are in cents per kilometer. Now, the values in the petrol factor column, however, are not cost values, and simply represent a number. So this feature will be explored further as we go down. So I'm talking now about the fuel factor. These are not cents. This is just a number. We call it a factor. That is the petrol factor. So you use it to multiply the, you multiply the actual cost per liter with this petrol factor, as you will see in the example that will follow. And of course, this formula can be used finally to determine the running costs of a car per kilometer. So the formula to find the running costs of a car or a vehicle per kilometer is given by the following formula here. Running costs calculation, that is cost per kilometer. You take the column in A, which consists of the fuel factor, and then you multiply that with the current value of the liter, in rands, petrol liter there in rands, and then you add the column B, and remember that column B, that talks of the maintenance of the vehicle, which is a service and repairs, and then you also add C, which is the tire, the cost of the tire, how much the tire costs per kilometer. So basically, when you have bought a car, this is how much it will cost you per kilometer. In other words, for service and repair. Remember that after a while, from time to time, cars are taken for repairs, and some cars will be repaired after, or the service will be done after 15,000 kilometers, for instance. Others, maybe 10,000 kilometers. But I think most vehicles are serviced after 15,000 kilometers. Now, before the service can be done, I'm sure there's a service book there. You'll see that, they will show you how much you have to, what was serviced and what needs to be paid. So you can actually project your own service by looking at the costs of your vehicle, that it costs you 17 cents per kilometer. For every kilometer that you travel, it will cost you a maintenance or service repair of 17 cents per kilometer, plus 8 cents for tire costs. And then, of course, tire costs may be separate because some dealers don't change the tires. You may change it somewhere, but others can include it as well. So these are the costs. Let's now look at the practical example. We are now going to zoom directly into the practical example of calculating the running costs of a vehicle per kilometer. Now, consider this example. Consider a car with an engine size capacity of 1,400 cc. That is the capacity of the engine. And of course, we are told that this vehicle will have the following maintenance costs. One, the service and repair cost, which is in B. You will see that it will be 19 cents per kilometer. So remember that table that I've just shown you in B, that is the service and repair cost. And then, of course, you will also have the tires cost, which is 13 cents per kilometer. Where do we get all of these values? You can tell me, where do I get this value of 19 cents per kilometer? And also, where do I get the value of 13 cents per kilometer? Obviously, these values are found in the table. So remember that the table guides you every step of the way. For example, we've chosen the car, which is now with the engine capacity of 1,400 cc, and that is the capacity of the engine, and using that capacity, then we can see the relevant service and repair cost, which is also calculated in cents per kilometer, which is now 19 cents or 19.76 cents per kilometer. And of course, the tire cost as well will be 13.10 cents per kilometer there, which will definitely guide you in as far as this particular exercise is concerned. So now that we have all the values that we need, we have the engine capacity there, which is guiding us on the type of service and repair cost. The column there in cents, it's 19.76. We also know 13.10 cents per kilometer for tire cost. Then the last thing that we have not spoken about is the fuel factor. Remember the petrol factor? We need to take the corresponding petrol factor and use it to calculate. So our formula will not be complete if we do not include the fuel factor. But remember, we also need to know how much is the price of petrol per liter. So we are going to find out now. And of course, in this example here, you can see that the corresponding petrol factor will be 7.39. And that is the corresponding factor, which is corresponding with the engine capacity there, which is 1,400 cc. That is the engine capacity. And now when you have these values, the only thing that you need, like I said, will be just the price of petrol so that we can complete our calculations. So you can see that we are starting there to calculate now. We say that the running cost, now that we have everything in place, we know that the running costs, the formula is given by the cost per kilometer, where we multiply A, which is the fuel cost. We multiply that by the petrol price in rands per liter, and then plus B, which is a service and repairs, plus C, which is tire cost per kilometer there. Yes, of course, please notice that the petrol factor must be multiplied by the current petrol price, as I've already told you. So we are now going to multiply the petrol factor by the current petrol price. And the result of that must be added to the service and repair cost, as well as the tire cost. So there are three things there that you are going to add. The first one is the petrol factor, which is multiplied by the current petrol price per liter, plus the second one is you are going to add the service and repair cost, which are in cents per liter. And the last one, of course, which is the third, is the tire cost. Now, all of this gives you the running cost of a vehicle per kilometer. So you can see that that is just the formula that we just spoke about. And then, of course, everything is per kilometer. The cost is per kilometer. So now you will know that once you have the cost per kilometer, it will help you to make a projection. If you take, for instance, a trip from Johannesburg to Cape Town, or from Durban to Mafikeng, for example. Now, here is our factor. The petrol factor there is 7.39. And then, of course, you have multiplied that by 10.61 or 10 rands and 61 cents per liter. So the price of petrol is known to be 10 rands and 61 cents per liter. That is the price that we have it. It may not be the exact price of the current petrol. Of course, this is just an example. So you take the factor there, 7.39, and then you multiply that with the price of petrol per liter. And You add 19.76 cents per kilometer there. That is the cost of service and repairs per kilometer. And the last cost, of course, will be 13.10 cents per kilometer there. That is the price of the tire, or the cost of the tire per kilometer. Not necessarily the price of the tire, but just the cost, how much it costs you per kilometer. Once you have this, you will see that when you multiply 7.39 by 10 rands and 61 cents per liter, you'll be able to get about 78.4079 cents per kilometer. So remember, we are multiplying this with rents, and of course, that will give us 78.4079 cents per kilometer. Now, you add 19.76 cents, and then you also add 13.10. And of course, the answer will give you 111.2679 cents per kilometer. So everything now is in cents. We know that it will be 111.2679 cents. Remember, you can actually convert this to rands now because it is quite easier to work with rands than cents. I mean, the rand is the value or is the currency of our country, so it is much better to work with rands than cents. Now, you need to now convert those cents into rands. Remember that 1 rand consists of 100 cents. So in order to convert this to rands, you can divide this amount by 100 because 1 rand is the same as 100 cents. So if you have got 111 cents, then it means you'll have 1 rand and 11 cents per kilometer. This is how much it will cost you to maintain your vehicle per kilometer. This is the price that you need to pay per kilometers. Sometimes there are people who hire cars either from a company that rents or rentals, that does rentals for cars such as Avis or any other car dealer. They charge you, for instance, per kilometer. They can give you 200 free kilometers on your, the first 200 kilometers for free, and thereafter you start paying per kilometer. Because when you take the car, for instance, you may travel from Johannesburg to Cape Town, which is a trip of more than 1,000 kilometers. So costs are involved. There are cost implications for every trip that you have to take with a car. So this is the exact formula that we use to calculate costs per kilometer. And of course, in the case of hiring a vehicle, you may be told, for instance, that you have to pay about, let's say, 5 rands per kilometer, depending on the car. Those of you who may know how the operations work for rentals of cars, the bigger the engine size of a car, the bigger the amount you'll pay, for a car per kilometer. You'll be told that, for instance, if you take a bigger car, you may pay 7 rands, per kilometer. You may be charged 7 rands per kilometer, whereas in a smaller vehicle, you may even pay about 4 rands per kilometer. So those are costs that are of calculations. And of course, even in our case, we have used the formula to calculate the cost per kilometer. So let's say, for instance, you want to take a trip. We now know that the running costs are 1 rand and 11 cents per kilometer. That is if you round it off. But remember, if you are going to check the total cost of a trip, let's say This is a car that you have to drive for, from one place to the next. You don't have to round off this figure, 1,112679. You don't have to round it off. In mathematical literacy as well as in maths generally, we do not round off before we arrive at the final answer. So you can only round off in the final answer. So please note that we have just given you the information here on the left that do not round off yet. This is because if we use this value to determine the cost of a trip with a particular distance, there will be an impact. These decimal values will have an impact on the accuracy of the final cost calculation for the trip. So do not round off yet. Please leave the amount as it is. You will round off at the end of the calculation. So if the petrol price, for instance, changes, then that affects the running cost value. It will change as well. Let's say, for instance, the price of petrol goes up. It will definitely affect the running cost per kilometer. That is why even the same companies that I've spoken about, such as AVs and others, once the petrol price goes up, you will see, if you have worked with them, you will see that their prices per kilometer will also change. The costs will go up as well. As such, this calculation will have to be repeated every time the petrol of price changes. So it cannot be a fixed calculation. Remember, you need to use the fuel factor and you multiply that by the price of petrol per liter. So if the price goes down, then it means it will affect your cost per kilometer. Your cost per kilometer will also go down. If the price goes up, again, the price or the running cost value will also change. It will probably go up as well. Now, we can now use this running cost per kilometer just to find out or determine the cost of a trip. Let's say that you are going to take a trip from Johannesburg to Cape Town via the Bloemfontein road or via Bloemfontein. Remember, there are two routes that you could take from Johannesburg to Cape Town. You could use the road via Kimberley. I think that's N12. Alternatively, you can use the road via Bloemfontein, and that is N1. And we know that if you use the road via Bloemfontein, the kilometers will be different than when you use the other one via Kimberley, for the simple reason of too many stops in the other, but the roads are not the same as well. So there will be a difference. So now we are going to concentrate on the trip to Cape Town from Johannesburg via Bloemfontein. And of course, the distance for this trip is 1,369 kilometers. That is the actual trip of our the distance from Johannesburg to Cape Town. And of course, the running cost, please bear with me there, it should be the running cost. We have already calculated it to be R1.11 per kilometer. So we are going to take that R1.11. Remember, as you can see here, I did not round off. I did not round off. So this actually means that you can multiply that entire amount, 1,112679, by the total distance from Johannesburg to Cape Town, which is 1,369 kilometers. And of course, you will get approximately 1,523 rands and 26 cents. Now you can round off because you have now multiplied the value of your cost per kilometer there by the number of kilometers. All right. So once you multiply that, then you know that it will be 1,523 rands and 26 cents. And of course, that will be the value. And of course, we know that if the price of petrol has changed, then it affects everything there. So we are now coming to the most important factor, which is the total operating costs. Some people may think that we are done when we say the trip will cost you, will cost 1,523 rands and 26 cents. But there's something called the total operating costs of a vehicle. And what is this total operating cost? We define the total operating cost of a vehicle as the total cost for using a vehicle. And this is a combination of both the fixed and running costs. So there are fixed costs, there are also running costs. And right now, what we were talking about were the running costs. We just did the calculations for the running costs per kilometer. We found it to be 1 rand and 11 cents. And then you multiply that with the distance, for your journey from Johannesburg to Cape Town. And then that actually gave you the running cost. So what we have here is just the running costs per kilometer. So for 1,369 kilometers, this is how much costs or how much it will cost you. These are the running costs for your vehicle. Now we are going to look at the fixed costs, but we know that once you add the fixed costs together with the running costs, you have what is known as the total operating costs. And of course, we define the total operating costs as the sum of the fixed cost and the running cost. And in this case, the fixed cost, as you can see, plus this is the fuel cost, plus service and repair, plus tire cost. Remember, we've done that already with our fuel factor there. And then, of course, we are going to show you an example just so that you can see how do we calculate the total operating costs. So we're going to look at this example. Consider the same car, 1,400 engine capacity, which was bought for 85,000 rands with an average mileage of 16,500 kilometers per year. So we're going to explore this already, which is explored in example 1 and 2. So the same car which we spoke about now, where we have calculated the running cost per kilometer, that same car was bought for 85,000 rands. It had an average mileage of 16,500 kilometers per year, as it was explored in examples 1 and 2. Now, the fixed cost value in example 1 will be 1 rand and 60 cents per kilometer. And of course, The running costs, we've already calculated it in example 2, and that is R1.11 per kilometer. So now that we know what the fixed cost value is, the total operating cost will be the sum of the fixed cost value and the running cost value. And of course, this will give you R2.71 per kilometer. Once again, please do not round off before the final answer. So you take this value as it is, which is now the total operating cost. And of course, you can use this total operating cost to find or calculate the accurate cost of traveling in a car. And of course, you will see that in the same trip from Johannesburg to Cape Town, the total operating cost of the trip will be, you take the whole expression or the whole decimal fraction, that is R2.71. But of course, you take the whole decimal figures there. You don't round off, like I said, until the final answer. So you multiply that with the kilometers from Johannesburg to Cape Town. You can see it will now give you 3,713 rands and 66 cents. This is the total operating cost just for a one-way trip. Remember, 1,369 kilometers is just the distance from Johannesburg to Cape Town. We did not calculate, the amount for coming back. So this is just a single trip. So in a single trip, that's how much you'll pay. You will be able to pay 3,713 rands and 66 cents. Now, if you have to make a return trip, this means you will simply have to double this amount, 3,713 rands and 66 cents. You just have to double that, because then you are making a return trip to Johannesburg. So the total operating cost will then be, you multiply this value by 2, 3,713 rands and 66 cents. If you multiply that by 2, you will get 7,427 rands and 32 cents. And that is the amount that you will pay in as far as this trip is concerned. So basically now, we have taught you this morning, we have done the running costs of a car per kilometer. We've also done the the total operating cost, which is made up of fixed amount plus the running cost, per kilometer. And of course, in our next lesson, we will look at the mode of transport again, where you are just traveling by a bus, just to finalize different modes. And of course, as I've said in the beginning, there are cost implications when you have to use your own car. Remember that we have the fixed value there, and we also have the running costs. We have looked at this example too, and then of course we've also looked at the first example there, where we were talking about the running cost of a car plus the fixed value. So remember that the running cost of a car are fuel or diesel. Sometimes it can be diesel, and then you also have maintenance such as servicing and repairs. The third one is the cost of replacing the tires. And of course, the next one there is the table that we have looked at, which consists of the engine capacity and the fuel factor there. Remember, this is not the price of fuel. This is just a number. You use this number to multiply the price of fuel per liter. You add the service repair costs or service and repair costs plus the tire costs. And then we have looked at the example where we have been able to calculate the running costs of a vehicle. And of course, we found it to be R1.11, and we don't round off until the final answer. And of course, when the distance from Johannesburg to Cape Town is 1,369 kilometers, you can then multiply your value with the kilometers there to find 1,523 kilometers. And of course, now you can round off in the final answer. But then remember, the running costs are not the only costs that are involved. We also have what is known as the total operating costs, which is made up of the fixed costs and the running costs. And we have shown you that the fixed cost is calculated to be R1.60 per kilometer. And of course, we have the running costs. Once you add the two, then you have the total operating cost per kilometer, like in this example. And then, of course, you may use this now, to calculate for your journey or your trip, which was from Johannesburg to Cape Town, and then you multiply your total operating cost per kilometer by the number of kilometers to get this value here, which is 3,713.66. And of course, if you are going to make a return trip, then you will have to multiply that by 2 so that it covers your journey to Cape Town and back to Johannesburg. This is the end of our lesson. And of course, please feel free at any time just to contact us on info@africateamgeeks.co.za. We are also found at, on social media platforms like Twitter account. We are at Africa Teen Geeks. You can also visit the DBE link on Twitter account as well at DBE_SA. Now, this lesson was brought to you by the Lockdown eSchool in partnership with the Sasol Foundation. Until we meet again tomorrow, thank you very much indeed.